Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Second round of the S1 Racing GT3 series is upon us, and with it brings another fantastic American road course here on Apex Racing TV. I'm your host, Ron Mullins, joined by Taylor Stolworthy in the commentary booth, with Joshua Wilkie working the cameras in the virtual production hauler. And now we had a fantastic race 2 weeks ago at Sebring, another fantastic American road course. It's great to have two American road courses to kick this season off, and Road America is no exception. We saw some fantastic racing 2 weeks ago at Sebring. We had a brilliant close, just, it was photo finish, if I can spit my words out. It was a photo finish that we saw for the last two podium spots, and it was eventually Greg Hovison taking the win in fairly convincing fashion, and he's doing something very similar this week, and he's not actually, didn't set a practice lap, but he is kicking butt right now in qualifying that we are currently in. So this is currently in the qualifying session as we speak, and as I said, it was Hovison right now kicking butt right now, 1.5 tenths ahead of Bellinger in P2, and these drivers were up towards the podium, were up in the podium, as I should say, 2 weeks ago at Sebring. I'll bring up the race results that we had, and as I said, it was Gregory Hovison bringing home the victory in fairly convincing fashion 2 weeks ago in Sebring, and it was actually Jake Luther finishing in P2 with Olivier Bellinger in P3. So we've got Bellinger and Hovison 1 and 2 right now, and Bell's a little farther back right now. Actually, I do not see him on our actually no. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Luther. I got my names confused there. We have Luther in P4 right now. So the podium that we have is a little bit shuffled up, as Domark right now is sticking in there a little bit. So right now, I think I'll pass the quick words off, as Hovison actually goes much quicker there, sets in another brilliant qualifying lap, goes into the 204s right now, and extends his gap up towards the front. So if I'd like to pass it off to my co-commentator Taylor here for some quick words before we get into this race. I'm not sure, he had to duck out a little bit, probably went to use the bathroom, so I'll see if he is here. Taylor, are you
I'm
with
here.
us?
Yes, I am here, and I am excited. Road America is always another fun track to race at, and Hovison off to a strong start. My eye is on Kyle Domark, who's having a great qualifying session as well. Currently 26 hundredths behind Bellinger, but has plenty of time as we near the final few laps of qualifying to try to take that second place position. And looking up and down the rest of the grid, Simon Attrell, who had an early wreck last time, wanting to improve this time, finds himself in P5.
He's definitely looking for some kind of redemption. He was joking after last week's race how he'd like to make it further here in Road America, but even if that doesn't happen, he still has plenty of time left. We still have 4 rounds after tonight, and the next round will actually be at Mount Panorama, so we have a little bit of a break with the All-American tracks. We go down under in Australia on October 11th to run at Mount Panorama. That'll be a fantastic race, and if you'd like to watch that here on Apex, you know where to find us here on Apex Racing TV on Wednesday, October 11th at 9:10 Eastern Time, 6:10 Pacific, and no Europeans are probably watching this unless they have a really messed up sleep schedule, which, hey, I can't really disrespect. My sleep schedule is pretty messed up as is, so right now we're still in qualifying, following Dormark, who goes a little bit wide, coming through a very challenging corner of turn number 13. That's always a very tricky spot here. It's always a corner where you can make a really bad, just ruin your race if you go really wide through there. It's a tricky corner with not a whole lot of runoff area, and if you get it wrong through there, you have a very good chance of getting hit by someone else.
Yeah, it's a somewhat narrow track. There's not a lot of room for side-by-side racing. Certainly different than Sebring, where it's very wide on the airport strip with plenty of room to go 2 and maybe even 3 wide. But as you look at some of the replays here, there's just enough room some parts of the track to fit only 2 cars, and that should lead to some exciting racing, but also difficult moves for side-by-side action.
I think the buzzword there of exciting really fits this race, because this track obviously has a lot of heavy braking zones and it has some good overtaking opportunities despite being as narrow as you mentioned there, Taylor, but I think this will be some fantastic racing tonight. Of course, 2 weeks ago at Sebring, we saw a fantastic photo finish for the second place position. We saw some great racing all around. We saw some awesome battles all throughout the field, regardless of whether the drivers were running in the podium spots, whether they're running in the top 5, the top 10, or even outside the top 20 for that matter. Those drivers put on a fantastic race. So the 22 drivers on the grid today, I think we'll have some even better racing, as Justin Hall has a very big moment there coming out of turn 3. That's also going to be a tricky spot there. Not a whole lot of runoff area, as you said, and that'll come into play a little bit throughout this race. There is a 20 incident point limit here in this series. After 20 incident points, you do get a penalty, so that'll be something we might have to keep our eyes on with these drivers. And one thing as well, with the very tight and twisty section of this circuit, setup is usually key, but in this series, these drivers are running on fixed setups, so it's not really as much of an effect with this series as you would see. It's sort of a spec racing here. GT3 racing is always extremely close, but with fixed setups, it's going to be even closer. And right now, qualifying is living up to expectations, as the order is very close right now. This man, Olivier Bellinger, is currently running in P2, finished on the podium last time out in Sebring, as looking to try and actually know he is actually going to pull into the pits, and I believe that will pretty much seal the deal for Gregory Hoveson to grab a second pole position in a row. Grabbed the pole position in Sebring, had a very dominant drive, and he looks to have a repeat of that this week here in Road America.
Yeah, indeed. I don't think Atrol is on a lap. Maybe it could be the final flying lap from someone seriously in contention for the pole. But yeah, Hoveson, 2:04.7, the only driver to break into the 2:04s. In terms of the 2:05s, there were 10 from Bellinger to Finley, and then the rest of the grid is in 6, with the exception of Boscal and Brown, who are a little bit slower but have plenty of time to make it up over the course of the race.
Definitely a lot of time for these drivers to make it up. It's a lot of time, a lot of overtaking opportunities at this circuit, so we'll have to see what these drivers can do in the 45-minute race here. And of course, these broadcasts would not be possible without the wonderful sponsors that we have here, Dr. Dabber and Zine. We mentioned them last week, and they will continue to support us all throughout the season. If it wasn't for them, this series and these broadcasts would not be possible. The S1 series is new here on Apex, and we hope that this is the second broadcast of a very long and fruitful partnership. We had a fantastic race 1 week ago in Sebring, and we look to continue that streak here. So qualifying has wrapped up, and it's Gregory Hoveson grabbing the pole position for the second week in a row. He puts in a fairly commanding performance there, 3/10, which isn't, that gap doesn't really tell the whole story. 3/10 of a second gap at a much smaller circuit is definitely very impressive. It's still impressive here, but at a track with over 2-minute lap times, that'll produce some pretty big gaps. So that could be the reason why the field is spread out a little bit, but still the lap times are extremely close in this field. So I think we will get the starting grid up We'll get the starting grid up soon. The other drivers are just in the small little break now between qualifying and the race to get some drinks in, have a little bit of a break. Welcome to Road America, America's National Park of Speed. It's a fantastic circuit, and it'll hopefully be the site of some fantastic racing tonight. So we got the starting grid now, and it's Gregory Hoverson grabbing the pole position for the second race in a row. The Delta Sport driver sets in a brilliant time, over 0.3 of a second, ahead of Olivier Bellinger in P2. That's Kyle Dormark in P3, Jake Luther in P4. That's Simon Adriel looking for redemption, the other S1 Racing Series founder looking to have some redemption for round 2. He'll line up in P5, and then Spencer Reitzma in P6, Justin Dive Bomber, as we like to call him, in P7. That's Justin Hall. We got an old Justin fourth row here for the other second race of the S1 Series. That's Bradley Alves, my apologies, who's actually your Season 1 AM champion. We had a Pro and an AM category last season, so that's the reason why he was the AM champion. We don't have that this season, but he was the AM champion, looking to have a good start to the year. He lines up in 9th. That's Sharif Grizzle, my apologies, in P10. That's Tyler Finley in P11, and Ryan Scanley rounding out your top 12. And looking through the rest of the field, it's Santander Hinza in P13, Matthew Perrin in 14th. That's Jesse Olsen, who is actually your pro champion from last season. He is in 15th. Not the best qualifying performance from him. And then it will be Pantanellis Adalolis in the 16th position, then Brandon Johnson in 17th, Stephen Fitchin P18, Robert Elder in 19th, Christopher Casano in 20th, that's Jed Pascal, and then Shane Brown rounding out your field. 4.4 seconds separates all the qualifying times of these drivers, so a little bit spread out compared to what we had 2 weeks ago at Sebring, but I still think it's going to be a close field, and I think we're going to have some great racing. What are you looking forward to in this race, Taylor?
A lot of action, and keep an eye on 7th and 8th, Hall and Barrera. They were getting into it at Sebring. Those final few laps, an exciting battle, and they are going to be starting side by side. But I'll say, for Road America, keep an eye on lap 1. There will be some chaos. This is always a tough turn to get started when you are side by side with a lot of drivers. But then once you come out of this first section and going down the hill, that braking zone, I have a feeling we could see a little bit of carnage. It's very easy to mess up, especially as you're trying to fight for those early positions on lap 1.
Yeah, I gotta imagine that run coming into turn 1 is going to be very challenging. It's one of the heaviest braking spots on this entire Road America circuit. That's a behemoth of a circuit. This is one of the longest in all of America, and personally one of my favorites in all of America. It's an old school track that hasn't changed really at all in its time here on planet Earth, and its time hosting all kinds of motorsports events throughout the decades. I believe the layout has pretty much remained unchanged since the 60s, so it's a very old school track, this, with modifications that have been made to it, but still a very old school track with an old school feel. And the other sign that we saw is right before we went through the starting grid is still very true. This is the National Park of Speed. People that have come to see the races here at Road America have always said how just the sounds of the motors just echo through the trees, echo through the forest of the Midwest of the United States, and just seeing these cars barrel around this beautiful circuit tucked here in the woods of Wisconsin is always a fantastic sight. I believe we'll see some more fantastic racing here, these beautiful engine notes of all of these cars, and that might be a little bit of a theme throughout this race is the engines, because this is a very straight line speed dependent circuit. We'll have to focus on these drivers getting a very good slipstream to try and get past each other, and they'll also try and focus on getting a good run out of the final corner, getting a great run coming through here, the carousel, which might be another trouble spot on lap 1. We'll just have to wait and see what happens in a few moments' time when the green flag comes out. But these will be some very important corners for these drivers. I'll pass this off to you, Taylor, before we get this race underway. What do you think is going to be the corner that these drivers focus on the most?
Well, I mean, certainly in terms of overtaking opportunities, it's going to be tricky, but potentially that first corner and going down the major hill, those are the best runs you can get. Otherwise, you have to hope they make a mistake and you can find a certain area throughout the rest of the track. This potential long straightaway as well, you enter from the fast left-hander, and this could be another place where you try to set up a move. But I think you'll certainly find it in that first sector, and then once you get past the slower, more windy sections, past the Speedville sign, that's where you expect to see more of the overtaking action.
Yeah, the kettle bottom straightaway is going to be extremely important for these drivers to see if they can pull off any moves coming into Canada Corner, which has always been a good overtaking opportunity on this track, but it has a lot more runoff in real life, so these drivers don't have a lot of margin for error. You can see just a little bit of curb there, probably about 5 feet, 6 feet, you could say. I'm not really good with distance until they hit that gravel, so we'll have to see if anyone dares attempt an overtake coming into Canada Corner. We'll just have to wait and see in a few minutes' time. The S1 Racing Series here returns for round 2 of this season. Season 2 here of the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series. We had a fantastic race in Sebring, and we'll see another fantastic race hopefully here in Road America. The pace car has made the turn going on to pit road. The field is in control of your pole sitter, Gregory Hovison. The green flag will come out. The drivers will be on their way for the very long run coming into turn 1. It's Hovison getting a fantastic start in that number 115 Mercedes, but the drivers farther behind are going side by side. Some shuffling going on throughout the field. This field is actually stayed single file for a little bit, but it's actually the Mercedes getting the move done for P2 as the rest of the field stays fairly single file all throughout the field. Never mind the outside. I think I saw some 3-wide action as they came out of turn 1, went through turn 2. That was extremely close. There might have been contact, and we have some more battling up towards the front. That's the 044 there, and the 174, I believe. That's the drivers that started second and first in this race. Those are the drivers of Dormac and Olivier Bellinger that are battling coming into the turn 5. This is a very heavy braking opportunity, and looks like the Porsche there of Bellinger is going to look for the move there on the Mercedes there, and is going to give the driver a little bit of an elbow, force him into the grass a little bit. We might see some bullying for some passes here, but regardless of how you can get past, you always gain a position.
Yeah, good move, forced him a little bit wide, and Domark, he's not going to be that aggressive on lap 1, doesn't want to have contact and early damage. He knows he has plenty of time to fight back. There was a lot of action into turn 1, I believe. There was Spencer Reitzma falling down the field after being forced wide, and now single file through Speedville, now through this tough right-hander, where you have to do a mix of coasting before you find the right place to put the throttle down, heading towards the next right-hander to another long straight. Hovison still in the lead, but the question will be whether Bellinger will get a slipstream. Is he gaining as they go down the back? Does he have enough? He is closing the gap ever so slightly, looking to the outside. That is a risky move around the corner.
No!
There's some content, and he goes off into the gravel and likely into the tire barrier. Disaster for him. He's back running, but the question will be, how much damage does he have? He sent it on lap 1, and it has all gone wrong for Bellinger. Hovison holds on to the lead as we see Bellinger still falling, now down to 19th.
Well, unfortunately for the Podium Hunter esports driver, he went so far deep into Canada Corner, I think he was scraping the border with Yukon there. Unfortunately for him, that'll be a very unfortunate mistake for him. We might get a replay here to see what happened there. I think it was just very overly opportunistic there. It looked like he was going to get the move done, but there might have been a little contact, possibly a bit of netcode there. Now we'll get a replay here. Bellinger just had a fantastic run coming out of the King, coming through Kettle Bottom straightaway, and going into Canada Corner, just went for the dive around the outside. Coming into Canada Corner, it's a heavy braking zone on this track, and unfortunately for Bellinger, just a little bit of contact. I think he probably wouldn't have made that corner anyway. With the amount of speed that he had coming into that corner, that was a very risky move for him. Unfortunately, it has worked out badly. He went from second, then moved up into first for a brief, very minute moment there. Unfortunately for him, he has now dropped down like a rock. He is currently running in the P18 position.
Yeah, the only saving grace, the gravel prevented him from hitting the wall, so he'll escape with minor to 0 damage. But yeah, now a long way to climb back up, 9 seconds away from the leader, and he has to clear the entire rest of the field. As we watch a little bit of action down here with Brandon Johnson, as he's looking to try to get by Satur Dinza. But yeah, single file group, there's not going to be a lot of opportunities. There's Reitzma behind, he's got a fast car, and had also lost a few spots on the opening lap when he went around the outside and was forced out wide.
I believe Johnson and Reitzma might have had a little bit of contact there as they went into turn 8. That was extremely close. I definitely saw a big snap there. The number 222 Porsche there of Brandon Johnson. That was a big snap there as they went through turn 8. But fortunately for him, he has maintained that position until now. the Rennsport has a fantastic run here in that new Ferrari. Has always been a bullet in a straight line. Certainly this man, Simon Attrell, is making up spots right now. Started in P5, has now moved up to P3, so it's proving once again that Ferrari has some very good straight line speed. But one thing that Ferrari also has a little bit of with the yin of the good straight line speed comes a yang of the issue that it has sometimes hitting the curbs, and it gets unsettled with those curbs sometimes, but the curbs are fairly flat at this Road America track, so we might not see a whole lot of that in tonight's race, but I still think the curb action might play a little bit of havoc with the Ferraris. We saw Ferraris spinning off left, right, and center in Sebring, so right now we haven't seen too many Ferraris make mistakes. So right now, fairly clean racing. Besides that massive moment there for Bellinger going into Canada Corner, it's been smooth sailing so far.
Yeah, it's certainly the start that Simon Attrell wants. Keep an eye on Domark. He just set the fastest lap, and while Hovesen has a bit of a safe lead to the rest of the field, Domark is staying with him and using that slipstream as they head down the hill. He was 100th faster on that previous lap. I think we may have a really fun battle for the lead brewing right here.
Well, yeah, this is very close. This is the closest anyone has been to Gregory Hovesen all throughout the season. Sebring, he just ran away with it pretty much after the first few laps. He just pulled away, and I briefly mentioned there that the race had been clean. I actually scratched that. Cassano has had some kind of off, and we're going to get a replay to see what happened. He fell through the order. So I have a bad feeling about this. This is going into Canada Corner, and right as I mentioned how the Ferraris have a tendency to spin off a little bit, had that a lot through Sebring and issues with the curbs, and right as I say that, coming through Canada Corner, it's just a simple little spin there, lit up the rear tires coming out of Canada Corner, and unfortunately that shark tooth curb there catches Cassano out. He wrecks the front of that Ferrari and will be out of it tonight.
Yeah, he's back on track, but that certainly tanks any hopes of him getting a solid finish. But the good news is he doesn't have to retire right away, but it's certainly not what he was hoping for. He'd rather have a chance to fight among the rest of the field, like this battle currently brooding between Italiotis and Olsen right in front. They're following each other through this windy section, and we're gonna have to see what they do battling up the hill to the start-finish line. Italiotis will have a bit of slipstream as they go off the corner. Italiotis and them looking to catch up to the rest of that 5 through 10 pack. Will he have a move coming down into turn 1, or will he have to wait going down the hill? He's got a slipstream. Moving to the inside to defend is Olsen. Italiotis looking around the outside, but good defense, keeping the elbows out by Olsen. See if Italiotis has something on the exit going off the curbs. Doesn't look like it at the moment. He looks to the inside, but he is going to back off and wait as they go down the hill. And he gets one more shot with the slipstream. Olsen doesn't have anyone close enough in front to benefit, so we very well could see a move here for P12. Italiotis gaining, and now they have to time the brakes right. Olsen staying outside. Italiotis going to the inside. Who is going to be last on the brakes? It'll be Italiotis. He holds on for now. Can Olsen get the switch back? No, and that's a clean overtake, unless he can make something happen into this corner.
Ooh, just Italiotis knew exactly where to place his car coming into turn 6 and was able to hold off that challenge there from Olsen. He went very deep on the brakes coming into turn 5. I was actually managing to keep it on track. I was fully expecting him to just soar off and go into the runoff area, but thankfully for him, he manages to get that move done. That was a very good move there from Olsen, just very textbook move. And I will give a shout out to Olsen because he just knew exactly how to defend. He put on a brilliant defending job there. Speaking of defending, Attrell is now trying to defend from Justin Dive Bomber Barrera here. Beautiful name here in this series, and it looks like he might go for a dive bomb, looking around the outside possibly in that BMW. Not going to go for it there. Actually, no, he goes for the switchback there on Attrell. Attrell goes a little bit deep on the brakes there, has to take the shallow line coming into Canada Corner and loses that position there, so now he falls out of the podium spot. So it's Justin Dive Bomber Barrera grabbing P3.
You don't always imagine great racing discipline from a driver with the nickname Dive Bomb, but he did it perfectly. He had Attrell go way too deep defending and was able to get essentially a free position as he had a much better exit out of the corner, and he moves up into P3 as we have even more action. We're on board with Grizzle as we see even more drivers going side by side, as I believe he is side by side with Alvis, the amateur champion, looking down the inside. He should be able to hold on to the move, and he does for now, but they are still so close. the Porsche right on the rear of that Ferrari. Now looking down the outside, the 012. I don't think he has the move just yet, but he was challenging Alvis, and it gives Gristle a little bit of room to breathe.
And while we've been watching this action, Olsen has actually fallen out of the race. You can see the 420 of Adalotus right behind. He was battling with Olsen last lap, and unfortunately for Olsen, he's actually crashed. Not sure what happened there. We'll just have to wait and see. But oh boy, that's nearly a crash. That is a crash there for Pern, who goes way too deep on the brakes coming into turn 5. It's a very tricky corner to slide out, doubly so when you have a bunch of cars ahead of you. And unfortunately for Pern, he has to hit the barrier to take avoiding action there. But that could have been absolute disaster if he gave a car a bit of a nudge there, a bit of a bump coming into turn 5. That will have ended in total disaster for at least both of them, if not all 3 cars will have gone wiped out in that. So good avoiding action there from Pern to avoid an incident there. But yeah, just very aggressive racing right now. These drivers are getting their elbows out a little bit. We still have very far left in this race. We're only 9 minutes, nearly 10 minutes in to this 45-minute race, and a lot of drivers have gotten their elbows out, and a lot of drivers have also made mistakes, and Olsen was one of them. We're going to get a replay here to see what happened. Ooh, that is a sad-looking Ferrari on the inside of the grass there coming through turn 14. That is the final corner there. Not sure what happened there. It looks like, what I can imagine is he just, I mean, it's a very easy mistake just getting on the throttle, and with that curb, we saw it happen there with Cassano a few laps ago. He had that incident coming out of Canada corner where he just dropped it on the curb, so I think that might have been same story, different corner there for Olsen. So 2 Ferraris having issues with the high curbs and just spinning off, so I think the issues that we saw in Sebring and the issues that we've seen all throughout GT3 racing so far with this Season 4 of iRacing in 2023. Saw a little bit in the ARL GT3 trophy here on Apex Racing TV that just ended yesterday, and we also see a little bit of it here at the start of the S1 series. So these Ferraris are having bits of issues here with the curb, so that could be the reason why both of those Ferraris have pulled out of the race so early.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a shame.
And that is very unfortunate there. Just, I mean, for your race to be derailed so quickly, so early on, it's such a shame, you know. Oh, man, you got to feel so bad for these drivers. It's unfortunate, but hey, that's part of racing.
Yeah, it certainly is, and as you were talking about, just one small error at a track like Road America can lead to some disaster. I'm not sure if there was any contact there between Italiotis and Rennsport, but they were going a little bit slower out of the hill corner, and Italiotis still trying to hold on and fight against Rennsport, who I think is hungry to fight his way back up the field after his lap 1 incident sent him down further the order.
A lot of drivers putting in some very quick lap times right now. The 2 drivers that are really the stars right now are Hovesen and Domark right now that have actually pulled a pretty big gap between them and Justin Barrera in P3. So they've kind of formed a little bit of a peloton here. There's actually Domark, as you can see from this graphic. Thank you, Josh, for that. You can see that Domark actually set the fastest lap has the fastest lap right now at a 2:05.4, which is very similar to qualifying pace. So I think Domark is definitely a man to look out for. At this moment, he is keeping pace there with Hovesen. He is not really closing that gap, but he is not letting Hovesen pull away. And there's still plenty to go for in this race. We have pit stops to contend with. We have a lot more in store. So if you want to see the conclusion of this race, you know where to stay here on Apex, because we are not over yet. We still have plenty of racing action here from round 2 of the S1 Racing Series here at Road America.
Yeah, indeed. Still about 30 minutes. Domark just 6 thousandths faster that last time out. He is keeping pace, but Hovesen is a tough racer to keep up with. He's going to need some slipstream help down this next straight as he looks to close up through Sector 1. But yeah, interesting to see that duo pulling away. They're 4 seconds up on Barrera, who currently holds on to P3. His margin isn't completely safe, though. Only about half a second to Attrell, then Hall, then Luther, then the rest of the pack. We're following Luther right now as he's closing up to Hall. He could be within dive bomb distance. See if he goes for a move or see if he waits for a potential mistake. He's not going to go for anything just yet, but these 4 cars very close. Hall even closer to Attrell, actually.
This field has spread out a tiny bit, but right behind Dive Bomber Barrera, it is a massive train. You can see just Barrera is about about 5.5 seconds off of the lead right now, and just looking through, you can just see, I mean, you could just see it on your screen. The field is very tight, and that was some very tight racing between Hall and Attrill there, as they got very close to contact there, and we're nearly going to go side by side coming into turn 8, and it looks like it looked like Hall was going to try and eye a move coming through the carousel. This is some very aggressive racing from these drivers right now. Attrill is holding his own right now. He's definitely making up for the misfortune that he ran into 2 weeks ago in Sebring, so he's looking to have a good race, but looks like he might possibly lose the position here to Hall. Hall's a fantastic run coming out of the carousel, coming out of the kink, and coming through the straightaway going into Canada corner. Closes up a little bit in the braking zone, but right now he is still stuck behind that Ferrari there of Attrill, so still some very close racing here, but not a whole lot of field shuffling, but I think that'll change very soon.
Yeah, it certainly feels like Hall's a little bit impatient behind Attrill. He wants to catch up to Barrera. He has some unfinished business with him after their fun battle at Sebring, and he knows he's slightly faster than the league founder and owner, and he is going to be trying with some slipstream down the main straight. He's gaining oh so slightly. He's going to shoot to the inside in about a second. Oh no, he's going to actually hold off for the moment and wait likely for the next corner. You can tell just how closely he's following, that he's looking for a mistake. He may have just found it as Attrill went a little bit wide out of that first corner, but he's ultimately going to think better of it and wait as they set up down this next main straight. Luther is still rather close too. Depending on his exit, we could even see cars trying to go 3 abreast into the next corner. That slipstream is going to make it tough for Luther to catch up to Hall. Hall closing on Attrill. Is he looking to the inside? I think he is. The owner defending up high again. Now Luther looking potentially to the inside. He backs away, and they are still so close, nose to tail, as they head up through the slow sectors once again.
I think all of these drivers are trying to find any way to get past each other. I'm sure they're feeling a little bit frustrated with the just seeing the back of the car ahead of them, so I think we might see some passing here. We've got some battling farther back there. Just a very close, tight-knit pack here that we have of these GT3 cars. It's some fantastic stuff right now. It's a little bit different than Sebring, where we did have some tight packs throughout the field, but usually the field will just spread out into 1 or 2, sometimes 3 car battles. Right now, we've got a massive train here. I mean, just looking through, we've probably got about 5 or 6 cars involved in this, so we've got a lot of cars right here, and another car I believe has actually pulled off. That's Finch, who was towed back to the pits, but never mind that. We've got a Ferrari battling here with the BMW here of Justin Hall. They've been battling a little bit, they've been scrapping a bit for the past few moments, and it's still Attrill staying ahead. That was a very costly mistake from Attrill as they went through turn 1, but fortunately for him, he managed to defend in just the right places to get that, just hold on to that top P4 position right now. Still some very heated battles. Meanwhile, this is going on. I was going to say that Justin Barrera may get dragged into this fight a little bit. That BMW is kind of like a flying brick coming down the straightaways, especially compared to that sleek and slick Ferrari of Simon Attrill. But he's pulling away right now. You can see he was about half a second, actually 0.6 of a second quicker than the drivers behind him, because they're just battling so hard right now that they're so preoccupied. Never mind that, they're continuing to battle hard. Simon Attrill yet again makes a mistake coming through turn 1, and this time it looks like it's going to cost him even more as Hall goes for the move coming into the inside of turn 3. They're still going side by side as they go down this straightaway here, one of the longest straightaways in all of American racing, even though it has a little bit of a curve in it. It's a not so straightaway, but we're seeing some tense battling here, and it looked like that, I believe that was Luther, and it looked like he was going to try and make it 3 wide as they went into turn 5. That was some gripping stuff there, but Attrill still manages to hold on, but it's not over yet. Hull looks for the move coming into turn 6, still extremely close. They are going side by side, coming through turn 6, going into turn 7. Walm's going to have to back off, and neither of them do. They're still going side by side coming through turn 7. That's not really a corner where you see some side by side action, but it's going to be a battle of the last of the late breakers as they go into the tight, twisty turn 8 here, and it's Hall pulling ahead, and Attrill actually having a little bit of contact there with Luther as he got passed by Hall. This is some action-packed racing here, and we're barely into this race.
We certainly are. Hall was able to get the move done after losing it on that back straight. I think Luther had been giving a little extra draft to Attrill going down the back straight, and that prevented Hall from holding on for the moment. And now some more side-by-side action in the back. Kieran being challenged. He's barely holding on down the inside, almost bump drafting as we head into the Canada corner. There's no contact, they both keep it clean, but still a lot of aggressive action even further down the field. Finley, Reitzma, Alvis and Piran fighting, and now we see Attrell under attack, not from Hall, but this time it's going to be from Luther as they head to the start-finish straight. Sorry, not from Luther, it's actually going to be Grizzle, as Luther had also gotten past previously, and see if Attrell can hold on to P6 or whether Grizzle is going to try something entering turn 1. It's where Attrell has had a few problems in the past. He's going to go to the inside, and he's going to think better of it. He didn't have enough juice to make it happen just there. We'll have to see both of their exits. Attrell this time gets it right off the curb. So does Grizzle. A Porsche right behind them. Could even get a little help from a slipstream. Them battling through a turn would certainly get him a little bit closer to the fight, as Hall is looking to try to close the distance to Barrera. Domark and Hofson still close fighting for the lead. Barrera doing pretty well so far. 4 tenths behind Domark in terms of his last lap, and he is a further 2 tenths in front of Hovison, surprisingly. And yeah, won't be any action going down into the corner this time. But oh, actually maybe there will. Attrell left the door open. Grizzle tried to get through, but it closed just as soon as it was open, and it leaves him vulnerable to Scowney. Scowney may be looking to the inside of this turn. No, he's going to back off.
This is some absolutely insane racing that you see on screen, folks. You can look at the SDK graphics that we have on the left-hand side of your screen, looking over the pylon right now. We've got just a whole lot of cars. We've got some more tense battling going on farther behind. That's between Retsma and Pern, I believe, as they go side by side. I'm sure Pern is feeling a little bit of the burn there with the damage he picked up with the scrape there. Never mind, we got some crashing here. That's Ed Lotus there crashing with Finley. The Mercedes and the Ferrari drivers crash with a small little tumble there coming through the carousel, and a very unsafe rejoin there from Finley, who actually holds up De Hinza behind. But that was just a small little tumble there for them, just getting really rough, trying to pull off a short track bump and run there, coming through that very long right-hand sweeper of the carousel. Admiral had a very big snap there coming out of Canada corner, and oh boy, that's contact coming through turn 13, and Simon Admiral, oh no, he gets hit again as going to hit the barrier. Oh dear, that's unfortunate for Simon Admiral. That is going to ruin his race, and that's also going to ruin Retsma's race as well. Just a lot happening there. Ooh, nearly makes contact again there as Lotus gets past, and you can see the cross-up steering there of that Ferrari of Admiral. I think he might just pull it off and call it a day. That's unfortunate. Admiral was looking to have a nice recovery drive after the unfortunate race that he had 2 weeks ago in Sebring, and looks like he is not going to find that redemption tonight. We have some more battling going on farther ahead. This is between Grizzle and Pern. So that was just a lot of action going on there. We probably had about 3 crashes in the span of about 45 seconds. That was some very action-packed stuff there.
Yeah, Attrell going around, and then the driver behind Reitzma a little bit too fast and absolutely rear ends it. And that is definitely the end of both of their races. This is Attrell just limping, trying to head back to the pits. Almost gets hit by Italiotis, who we saw in that spin earlier. There's even Finley in the other. Oh, they were so close to hitting into him, but thankfully there was no issues. This was back at the initial incident. Grizzle looking down the inside. I'm not sure whether he went down too far, and Reitzma trying to clear a few of the cars, just gets into his rear end, and that is his race over. An absolute bummer for Reitzma, who had done a great job battling back through the field, and an even bigger bummer for Attrell, who had had a great start to the race. But throughout the battling, there was a little bit of carnage to be had, and he is the victim at the receiving end of it. But now Hall is under attack by Luther. Luther fancies his chances as they continue to battle, now going down this other DRS straight on the back of the track.
Well, unfortunately, it seems like the incidents that have riddled this race so far have a bit of a red, white, green flares. You can see the drivers that have been involved in incidents throughout this race have all been running Ferraris. The bottom 5 right now, all of them have some kind of incident. Admiral, Cassano, Finch, Retsma, and Olsen have all had crashes so far in this race, and they're all running Ferrari. So I think the issues with this Ferrari are continuing, but certainly the incident there with Admiral there was not really a Ferrari or car-specific issue. That was just hard racing there that ended badly. But speaking of hard racing, we've got the battle up towards the front here with Hovison and Domark. They've still been very close to each other. They've been in cahoots throughout all of this race, and right now the gap is about 4/10 of a second, actually less than 4/10 of a second, fluctuating around 4/10 of a second, we'll say, bring out the bring out the thesaurus to get some proper words here. But yeah, just this battle has been extremely close with these drivers. And it's not going to change. We'll just have to wait and see how things shake up with the pit stops that should be coming up very soon. These drivers do have to pit during these races, and at a track like this, which is very stop-start, these drivers are going to be burning through fuel fairly quickly. So we'll have to see which one of these drivers are the first one to pull in. We'll see if anyone will try and undercut. We'll see if anyone can try and overcut. We'll just have to wait and see in a few minutes' time when the pit stop's near.
Yeah, certainly it's going to come down to a battle of the pit stop between these two. Dolmark was only about 3/10 away going down the hill last time up, so they may have a little bit of something extra at the moment getting through those tires and getting through the last stages of the initial fuel for the stint. There have been a few pit stops, but some of them have been for damage and a few other things. We'll have to wait and see when the rest of the field elects to make that change. There have been no fast laps since the start of the race. Dolmark still holds the fastest at 2:05.49. The graphic was up there just about a minute ago. And Hovesen only 100th behind. These two are so even and are putting on an exciting fight as they head through the Canada corner. Hovesen going deep, Dolmark going deep, but both get relatively good exits, and the gap is back to about half a second, but with Slipstream, it continues to shrink and grow as we continue 25 minutes through the race.
Just have to wait and see as these drivers cross the start-finish line, see what laps they set. Last lap they set pretty much close identical lap times. They were both in the 2:05.6 to 2:05.7 range, so only about a tenth separating those drivers last lap. We'll get to see on our live timing screens this lap around. Hovesen sets a 2:05.7, and Dolmark actually goes a little bit quicker with a 2:05.6, so these drivers are fairly matched pace-wise, and really they're the only drivers still setting 2:05 lap times. They are not too far off. I mean, Gregory Hovesen, the last lap set a lap time that was about 0.2 of a second, only 0.2 of a second, off of his best lap in this race. So it's still, these drivers up towards the front are still setting incredibly quick lap times that no drivers are really matching. The only driver last lap that set a lap time in the 2:05s was actually Pantelis Adatolis, who actually set his fastest lap of the race at a 2:05.91. So a lot of drivers are just struggling to match the other drivers up towards the front. The only driver that's matching him right now is Adalotis, but never mind that. We have the pit stops coming now. Finley is in, Dehinza is in, and we have a Porsche farther behind, the number 918 Porsche there of Elder. A lot of these drivers are coming into the pits a bit on the early end. Well, I say on the early end. This is round about the time. This is a midway mark of the race, so you can expect them to come in around this time. So we got the first round of pit stops coming, so I think it should not be too long until we expect to see our leaders come in as well.
Yeah, my guess would certainly be to expect them to come in around this time by. Bellinger and Skalny went in early, and so far the undercut has helped them. They're back into 11th and 12th. But yeah, the big group, Skalny, Finsley, Johnson, Elder, Dinza, all entering the pits for their pit stop to get the extra fuel. And I certainly wonder whether we'll see the same from our leaders, because the top 10 haven't visited the pits yet, and I'd say about 5 or 6 through that next part of the grid have pit for the strategy rather for damage. Could see whether there is some shuffling between them and other drivers that have been fighting through the middle of the field. Dolmark about 6/10 behind Hovesen. Hovesen always gets a little bit of advantage through the slow sections. Dolmark is going to elect to go in the pits first. He's going to try the undercut.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was going to say that I was expecting Hovesen to come in a little bit early, because he's had that clean air all throughout this race, and a track with so many straight line sections, you'd expect Dolmark to get a little bit better fuel mileage. But it's Hovesen actually being the last of the pitters there of that battle, as Dolmark takes a very long trundle coming down pit road. A lot of other drivers. There's Barrera coming in. There's Hall coming in. There's Luther coming in. We have a whole bunch of drivers filling into the pits at this stage. Just a whole gaggle of cars. We've got Alvis, your Season 1 AM champion. We've got Adalolis pulling in as well. So yeah, just you could see a whole bunch of cars in the pit. So we'll have to see if this can work. The big thing for the other driver that was running P2 earlier, Dolmark, is he going to get some clean air in this? It looks like he will. So he will have to drive like a bat out of hell on this outlap to try and pull off the undercut there on Hovesen. We'll have to keep a track of the lap times. I'm sure Hovesen will have to cover off and come into the pits. We've got some battling coming out of the pits here between Pern and I believe, yeah, that's Pern and Alvis there. They were going side by side, beating doors, and actually I believe Alvis actually did a little bit of lawn mowing there. Coming out of the pits, these drivers are giving nothing to their competitors. They're giving each other respect, but they're pushing each other to the absolute limits. That's fantastic to see, and I'm sure Kyle Domark is trying to push that car, that Mercedes of his, to its absolute limits, or we're seeing some more drivers pushing their competitors to the limits. This is Luther and Pern battling on their first lap out of the pits. They're going to go side by side coming into turn 5. I believe Pern is actually, I thought he was going to not gain that position, but never mind. He gets a great run coming around the outside, and it looks like he's going to get the move done on Luther. Yeah, Luther just is not hard enough on the brakes coming into turn 6. So it's Pern pulling off a pretty unexpected move there on his outlap. Oh, as Hovesen has actually come into the pits now. Hovesen is into the pits. So we'll have to see what kind of lap time these drivers are setting. Hovesen was definitely driving hard, but I believe that gap actually shrank between Domark and Hovesen. Domark had the clean air there. Hovesen might have had some lap traffic to contend with. I don't believe he did. Maybe he did. We didn't really see him on track as he was just in no man's land, for lack of a better term. So that's a 2-minute 14 there. Obviously, you have to account the other time in the pits. So we'll see here. Domark will have to keep a good eye on him as Hovesen makes that long trundle down the pits to get into his pit box. This is going to be very close on the rejoin here.
Yeah, certainly Domark had a 14-second pit stop. That's faster than anyone else other than Jesse Olsen, who actually had a 14-second pit stop before retiring. So that was probably the fastest completed pit stop. And now the question is, will Hovesen get back on track in time? 14.48 for his pit stop, and he does. Well, the question is, though, how close will Domark be as they enter turn 1? It looks like the gap will be about 2 seconds or so, potentially shrinking even further as Hovesen starts to get back up to racing speed. The warm tires will give Domark a slightly faster next lap, but Hovesen has helped himself out by gaining a bit of a gap. Barrera 7 seconds behind, and Hall leading Purin, who leads the rest of the pack, all within 3 seconds down in 9th place. Hovesen, the victor out of the pit stops, but the race is certainly not won yet.
Hovesen, the Delta Sport driver, pulled that off beautifully there. He knew exactly what kind of pace to set, but it's not over yet. That gap is continuing to shrink. Hovesen is struggling on those cold tires on that Mercedes. Meanwhile, the other Mercedes behind of Domark on slightly hotter tires, he is closing that gap. It was about 2 seconds when they came out of the pits, and it's now actually down to 1 second, but we have some more battling farther down. This time it's involving 2 Porsches here. The number 044 there of Bellinger gets the move done on Alvis going into turn 5. Bellinger had that incident early on this race and dropped like a rock through the field. Was actually down P18 at the early stage of this race, but as we saw that massive train of cars that pretty much stretched from P4 all the way down to P14, I believe it was. So when we add that massive pack of cars, which is still fairly large, you can cover most of these cars with only one blanket. Bellinger has just been able to cut through the field, use a strategy, use the roundup pit stops to his advantage, and he has recovered nicely. The driver who finished on the podium in a brilliant photo finish 2 weeks ago in Sebring is looking to have a very fantastic recovery drive to get a decent position. I think, depending on how he plays his cards, he might be able to get a top 5 here. We'll just have to wait and see. Meanwhile, we have some battling between Finley and Adalotus there coming out of the carousel. They're going side by side through the carousel. I thought they're going to go side by side through the kink. I was going to say if these drivers have any kind of death wish, they would go side by side coming through the kink, but they have settled down a little bit, and the gap has spread out a little bit here, but it's not over yet. This battle is still going to heat up in the next few moments.
It certainly is. Taliotis looking through her way through. And another note about Bellinger, I wouldn't be surprised if he can clear Luther and Purin quickly, if he could pose a threat to Hall coming to the race end. Dive bomb Barrera, fastest lap of the race, a 2:05.4 exactly. 400 exactly on the timing sheet. And now it looks like we've got another battle heading into the turn, side by side. It's going to be Luther completing the overtake on Purin. The question is, will Purin be able to get a run out of the next corner? Bellinger being pressured by Alvis. Both of them were very fast out of the pit stops, and Bellinger, his tire's a couple laps older. He may start to see tire wear as we come down through those final 15 minutes or so as we count down, and I think Luther is going to hold on for Purin just at the moment. They're still pretty close. The question will be whether Bellinger can start to catch back up or whether Alvis can continue to be a threat in P8.
think Bellinger right now is a man on a mission. He wants to have a good recovery. Obviously, he finished on the podium list last time out in Sebring, as I said, and he's looking to try and break into the top 5. That would be a brilliant result, really, from him after the setback he had very early on. So that'd be a good drive. We'll just have to wait and see. But this battle is not over yet. We've got battling farther down the field. Actually, it was Johnson who's come into the pits. I'm not sure if that's a scheduled pit stop from him or possibly some kind of crash. I'm not sure what happened there. I believe it might be a scheduled pit stop there, as he was battling with Brown a little bit before then. But just yes, got some very good storylines to follow as we approach the final 10 minutes of this race. We're 33, coming up on 34 minutes into this 45-minute race, and it has been action-packed from start to finish. We've had some good battling, we've had some close action, and even though the gap spread out a little bit here up towards the front, we have a battle for the lead, which we did not see 2 weeks ago in Sebring. So I think Hovesen is definitely going to be on his toes, trying to hold off Domark. This is going to be very, very close here. These drivers are still close, spreading out a little bit here. I'm surprised Domark isn't closing as much as he really should be going down the straightaway. I think he had a bad run coming out of the final corner, so that might be the reason why that gap is spread out a little bit. But yeah, you can just see lap times are still fairly close. Domark was actually faster than Hovesen last lap, but still just some very close battling here. And if they start to battle up a little bit more, I think we might see Justin Divebomb Barrera get involved into this fight. He is definitely very far back right now, 6.4, actually 6.5 seconds off of Hovesen in P1, but he's still within the same camera shot, and he's setting very similar lap times, if not faster lap times, than the drivers ahead of him at times. So Justin Divebomb Barrera might get involved in this fight if these drivers start to break out some fisticuffs.
Certainly, Barrera's going to be hoping that Domark can start to challenge and slow them down as they duel for P1. Meanwhile, the duels are still happening further down the field. Alvis trying to catch up to Bellinger. I don't think he has enough to try to make a move, but they are pretty close in terms of pace. It's always tough to break away from a train, and no one has got a real good opportunity to do it yet. Keep an eye on Piran, though, right on the bumper of Luther. These two had battled originally, with Luther taking the position from Piran, but Piran, I think, has regained some momentum and is looking to fight right back. 5, maybe even 6 cars will form this little train that is going from 5th to 10th potentially. Absolutely beautiful stuff. They're heading into the left-hander. It's always tough. You got to manage the throttle, and you got to know when to stick it on the exit. Who will get the better exit? I think Luther's got a really nice exit here, depending on what slipstream we will get headed into the Canada corner. Now the fast right-hander going down the back straight. Piran looking to gain about 3/10 back. Closing. There's not going to be enough room for a move as they head into that final part before the hill to the run to the line. Meanwhile, Hovesen has gained about a second to Domark.
Ooh, yeah, not sure what happened there. Might have been a mistake there from Domark. Oh wow, Hovesen set a stormer of a lap. That wasn't a mistake from Domark. That was just Hovesen kicking on the afterburners. Sets a 4-minute 5. That's actually not 4 minute. I messed up my words there. It's a 2-minute 4.5. If I can spin my words out properly here. It's late night here on the East Coast here in the United States, so that might be the reason why I'm confusing my words here. But yeah, Hovesen kicked on the afterburner there to put in a fantastic lap. I believe Domark might have made a mistake. We're going to get a replay here coming out of turn 6 and into turn 7. This is a very tricky section there. Oh, Domark just disappeared on my screen. Ooh, does a little bit of lawn mowing there, coming through the very tricky left-hand kink, actually right-hand kink there of turn 7. That's always a very tricky corner. Saw some side-by-side action there, so these drivers just have a whole lot of guts, and these drivers have a whole lot of guts continuing to battle. We've got 3 Porsches and 2 Ferraris. This will be a battle that we have to have our attention on in the final closing stages of this race.
It's certainly good news for Hall as well, who can probably take a deep breath. Their battling will give him some extra wiggle room, as Skalny now really has joined in with that group as they fight from 5th to 9th. He's going to be looking for something around Alvis, and who's also looking for something around Bellinger, who's going to be looking for a potential window between Piran and Luther as they head into Speedville. We're going about 7 minutes to go, plus 1 lap, of course. And that is where we'll see the conclusion of this 5-man group I expect there will be even more action as we continue. Looking at some of their last laps, they are all so close to each other.
I think you're exactly right there, Taylor. I think these drivers are going to bust their elbows out a little bit more, start banging doors. I mean, they were banging doors early on this race. They were banging doors 10 minutes in. So I think we might see some more door banging action here in the GT3 Sprint Series here on S1. It's been an absolutely fantastic race here, and I'm sure we'll have a fantastic conclusion to it as well. And if you want to stay tuned to this series, you know where to find us on October 11th here on Apex at Mount Panorama. That'll be an interesting race. That's a big slide there from Luther, has a big moment there and crashes coming out of the final corner. Luther just has a big tail action, big tail out action coming out of the final corner, has a big tank slapper. Unfortunately for Luther, he is unable to catch it, hits the barrier, has to pull in. That's a very sad front end of that Ferrari. Unfortunately for him, unfortunately for the Ferraris, it's yet another Ferrari losing it on the curb. I don't know if it's something with the way the Ferrari is this season, but we've seen it all throughout the season. We saw it at the preseason race that we had here in the S1 series at the Red Bull Ring. I saw some Ferraris losing it on the curb. So I think that might just be I guess you can call it a quirk and feature of the Ferrari. It's just very susceptible to losing it on the curbs, which aren't really high at this track. You know, you do have the shark tooth curbs coming out of Canada Corner and the final corner, and especially here coming out of turn 5. But yeah, you can see Pern not really losing it. It's just mix of getting the floor of the Ferrari upset, getting the downforce a bit upset, and just trying to get on the power a little bit too early. And unfortunately, it's caught out a lot of drivers, and unfortunately, the latest driver to get caught out there is Luther, who falls out of this brilliant fight that was setting it up quite nicely. We had the two Ferraris at the front end of it, then we had three Porsches in the rear, but unfortunately for Luther, he falls out of this fight towards the upper end of the top 5 and falls out of the top 15. That's a tough break for him.
Yeah, it certainly is. He was doing so well after a second place finish last time, but that'll certainly hurt him in terms of the standings. He could find his way back up to 15th or even 14th, depending how fast he's lapping compared to Finley, but not a lot of time to do so. Meanwhile, this trio, the fight for 5th, 6th, and 7th, is still much alive. They now just have an extra position cushion with that incident from Luther having occurred, but they are so close to each other, about a second separating the group. Skalny a bit further back. Domark closing up to the leader again. They are so close as they're maybe getting through some lap traffic. Back to 4/10. There was an issue for Hovesen. He only had a 2:07 last time up. That is certainly something to keep an eye on. It looked like Hovesen could be clear the distance with that massive lap he had turned prior, but all of a sudden, the fight is back. A 2:04.59 is crazy to beat, but last time up, Domark was 2:06.2. Hovesen, 2:07 down the hill. Will we see some action? Hovesen does get a little bit of help from Slipstream, but Domark can still get somewhat closer, as now the Ferrari they overtake will pull out of their way.
I was about to say we'll have to see the lap car there, or Finch. We'll have to see if he gets out of the way coming into coming into turn 5, and he does. Hits the brakes there. That's a sportsman move there from Finch. He gets the sportsman award here of tonight's action here in the S1 series. So that definitely would have been a big wrench in the works if he didn't get out of the way, because he definitely would have held up Hovesen coming through the very tight and twisty section of turn 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a very tight, twisty section of the circuit, really the only tight, twisty section of this track besides the top of the pants, if you want to say, the top end of the circuit. That's a little bit twisty to round off this lap, but that's always very tight and twisty coming through the middle section of the circuit, and that definitely would have been a big issue there for Hovesen if that lap car there or Finch got involved in it. But fortunately for him, he got a big break there. Both of these drivers got a big break. It is a little bit unfortunate if we had a lap car involved, but I believe that would have been definitely an action. It definitely would have created even more action. We probably would have seen a pass by now if that lap car didn't get out of the way, but thankfully for Hovesen at least, he did get out of the way, and we got some more Ferrari battling farther down the field. This is towards the middle section of the circuit and towards the back end of the field. This is between Castano and Luther, I believe. Actually, is it? Yeah, this is between Castano and Luther. Luther had that mistake there a few moments ago, and unfortunately for him, that has derailed his race. But he was involved in the battle in the top 5. Actually, I believe he was the last car in the top 5. In the top 10, you could say that battle was in, and now he's battling for just the last position outside the top 15. So how quickly things can change in this series. Meanwhile, the battle that he was involved in has heated up a little bit. Pern has actually gone past by Bellinger, so Bellinger having a fantastic recovery after the issue we saw from him not too long ago. He dropped down to 13th. Actually, no, he dropped down to 18th there and has cut through the field like a hot knife through butter to make it into the top 5. I believe we might get a replay here to see what happened with Bellinger to get that move done. I believe this might be coming. Actually, no, this is between Luther and that's a good battling there, and this is a battle that we want to keep our eyes on. This is Bellinger going for the dive, going into turn 5. Just a very simple move there on the Ferrari there of Pern, and manages to get that position done by the time they go into turn 7. So it's Bellinger pulling off a great move there.
Yeah, great fighting between the duo. Bellinger finally able to get the move, but certainly expect a little more action from this pack as we continue. Alvis, I think, fancies his chances against Purin, who is slowly falling away from Bellinger, who is struggling to break away thanks to the slipstream boost that the trio behind him will be getting as we continue the 44th minute. We don't have that much longer, maybe 2 laps to go, and this is where push comes to shove. Make it or break it, minute to win it. Any other synonym you want to say. It's about time for those final moves. Time to lick the stamp and send it. Alvis will be getting a nice run as he goes through the fast right-hander. He's only about 2/10 back and could very well have enough slipstream to try to make the overtake into the Canada corner. It won't be easy as Piran, I think, will probably look to defend the inside. He's kind of staying neutral on the defense, and Alvis is going to be waiting for the moment. Instead, closing up oh so close to the bumper as Hovesen extends his lead to Domark. The lead is not extended for Piran against Alvis. Heading through that final corner, Piran is going to get a nice little run to try to catch up to Bellinger, and he's going to pray it's enough as Alvis is nose to tail heading off the curbs and to the start-finish line. He's looking in the mirror. I think he had a slightly better exit, but that slipstream will hurt him eventually. The Ferraris, I think, have some decent top speed straights, as I believe that may have been the white flag waving. I am not completely sure. Through turn 1, Alvis will close up even more. This next corner is going to be where that action will be headed. The last great overtaking opportunity as we get set through this next right-hander. A little bit of extra gap. Domark and Hovesen going deep as we see this fight for the lead. I think Domark is trying to give it his all, but that may have been his last serious opportunity unless Hovesen commits an error, and he really hasn't. He was 2/10 faster last time up as they continue.
Hovesen and Domark continue to battle. They've been close all throughout this race. They really haven't been, I think the largest gap they've had all race is probably about 2.5 seconds. So these drivers have been extremely close all throughout this race. This has been a great battle to watch. And the other battle that we are following between Hull Bellinger, Bellinger, Pern, Alvis, and Skalny there. It's just been great battles all throughout this field. It's another fantastic race. Driver who has put together a fantastic race is Hovesen, who looks like he'll have a nice chance at a win unless Domark can pull off the fantastic move coming into Canada corner as that gap continues to spread out a bit. But this is a battle that we're following here as we're nearing the checkered flag of this race. The battle up towards the front has actually cooled off a bit, but this is a battle that we gotta watch. We got a battle up ahead between Pern and Alvis. All of these drivers have not had a straightforward race. Bellinger and Pern have been involved in incidents early on this race, and the other drivers have been just battling all throughout this race. They've been cutting tooth and nail, and this driver has been cutting tooth and nail with the driver who's going to finish P2. Gregory Hovesen is looking to finish first in both of the races to kick this season off. Hovesen is weaving and flashing the lights. It's actually going very slowly. Ooh, that's going to be a very close fight towards the end, but it's still about 0.1 of a second separating those drivers at the end. Hovesen wins, Domark finishes in P2, and Dive Bombarera finishes in P3, but this is a battle that we gotta watch here between Alvis and Perrin. He pulls out the last minute. This is gonna be a photo finish here, and I believe Bellinger got it. Bellinger, I believe, that was close there. That was extremely close there between Alvis and Pern. My apologies, I said Bellinger there. That was Alvis and Pern there battling. That was extremely close, and just too little too late there. We got some more side-by-side action coming across the finish line. A lot of these drivers battling tooth and nail all the way up until the checkered flag. We saw some great racing all throughout this field. Simon Adrill, you have to feel a heartbreak for him. He finishes in 13th, a good recovery after the massive incident that we saw him involved. That Ferrari was quite bent up, but thankfully for him, he took the fast repair and ends up in 13th. There's Tyler Finley crossing the line in the Ferrari to finish in P14. Casano will be next, and then followed by Jake Luther. The two Ferraris here are completing a group of 4 Ferraris, in fact, right towards the end of the top 15, actually outside the top 15 as well. The Ferraris have not had a very good night here, a lot of them involved in incidents, and just very, very tough for some of these drivers, and just action-packed racing. I gotta take a break here. I am out of breath, and my voice is about to blow out. That was some absolutely awesome stuff there at the finish. Oh, and perfect flare here. We've got Hovesen doing some donuts in the Turn 5 runoff area. Fantastic way to cap off a fantastic night of racing action.
Yeah, no wonder. I mean, you were calling all those final lap fights. But yeah, great win for Hovesen, slowing down a little bit at the line, but he didn't slow down too much. He didn't celebrate too early. And I think Piran was pulling out of the way for Alvis. I think the reason he may have done so may have been from a penalty from an earlier incident. I'm not sure. Maybe it could have been from that pit lane battle they had a little bit earlier. I think it may have been Alvis and Piran who were side by side and gave each other a little bit of contact. Good fight from Domark, but just second best today. Dive Bombarera, what a fight. He was extremely fast and gets a podium. After a great week 1, he's able to get a great race number 2. Behind him, Hall, and then the rest of that field. What a finish that was.
Yeah, that was absolutely awesome. Fairly new podium. We've got 2 drivers on the podium tonight that we haven't seen on the podium so far this season. The drivers that were on the podium, Jake Luther and Olivier Bellinger, both were involved in incidents, so they didn't have the smoothest race here. But the drivers up in the podium positions, Greg Hovesen, Domark, and Justin Dive Bombarera, all put together fantastic drives. Dive Bombarera was probably going through his phone throughout some of that race because he was really in no man's land throughout most of it. He was close to that battle up towards the front, but not close enough to make a dive. He really had to close in probably about 5 seconds to actually get involved in that fight. But still, just some awesome racing that we saw tonight, some fantastic action. And if you're watching this here on Apex Racing TV and you want to see more action here from the S1 Racing Series, you know where to find us in 2 weeks' time on October the 11th for the Mount Panorama round. That will be a fantastic race. Mount Panorama, one of my favorite circuits. It's a GT Classic. Holds the 12 hours of Bathurst. It's always a fantastic race in real life, and I'm sure the 45 minutes of the S1 Series at Mount Panorama in a few weeks' time is also going to be amazing.
Yeah, it certainly will. I mean, if it was anything like Road America, we are in for an absolute treat. An incredible performance from so many drivers. Got a note to come back from Bellinger to fight all the way back up to P5 after that lap 1 incident. But yeah, Hovesen just one above the rest in this race number 2 of the series. A lot of action, a couple crashes, and a couple fights that went right down to the wire. You don't want to miss it on Apex Racing TV. Like you said, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be back at Mount Panorama at Bathurst, and that should be a lot of fun.
I think for now we'll go through the race results and then we'll go through some of the other racing action in store here on Apex Racing TV in some of the coming days. So it's Gregory Hovesen taking his 2nd victory in a row. The Delta Sport driver pulling on another great drive, just barely edging out Domark, although that wasn't really the biggest telling of how that battle was. They were spread out a little bit. They just closed up a little bit towards the finish. So Hovesen edges out Domark there just by a little bit. They finish 1 and 2 for the Delta Sport team, and that's Justin Dive Bombarera finishing in P3, grabbing his first podium of the year. That's Justin Hall in P4. The other 2 Justins that started this race off in the 4th row, they finish in P3 and P4 respectively. They put together some great drives. And that's Olivier Bellinger, who was part of that fantastic photo finish there with Jake Luther. He finishes in P5. That's Bradley Alvis in P6. Matthew Perrin in P7. That's Ryan Scanley in P8. Grizzle in P9. Adalotis in P10. DeHinza in P11. Robert Elder finishes in P12. Simon Admiral, who had a very dramatic race once again, he finishes on track this time. Unfortunately for him, it wasn't in the top 10 as it looked like it would be early on. He finishes in P13. That's Tyler Finley behind Christopher Casano in P15. That's Jake Luther right there in P16, completing a quadruple set of Ferraris there that all had incidents throughout that race, and that's Shane Brown in P17, Stephen Finch in the 18th position. He finishes one lap down, the first driver to finish this race one lap down. Then looking through the rest of the finishers, we have Jed Pascal in 19th. Then it's Brandon Johnson, who finished 7 laps down after a late race incident. He finishes in 20th, 7 laps down. Then it's Spencer Retzema and then Jesse Olsen, who both had big crashes in this race. They fell out of the race. They finished 12 and 19 laps down, respectively, in P21 and P22.
Yeah, tough races for Reitsma and Olsen. Olsen retiring very early with his crash, and Reitsma, who had an incident early, was able to try to fight back, but ultimately got into the back of league owner Simon Attrell, and he was the ultimate victim, having to retire from that race.
Yeah, just absolutely, it's a mixed bag, really, from the drivers that we had this evening. We had drivers that had very good nights. Certainly, Gregory Hovesen has another great night to score his 2nd win this season. And we also had some drivers having very poor nights. But what we had here was a great night of racing action. And if you want to tune into any of the other action that we have here on Apex, you know where to find us. You can watch the Radical Round 3 coming up on Friday at Oldham Park. That'll be a fantastic race there at that small little plucky British road course. That'll be on Friday at 5 p.m. EST, 2 p.m. Pacific. Then we have the ARL Prototype Challenge Round 2 at Spa. That'll be a fantastic race also on Friday. That'll be at 2 p.m. EST and 11:30 Pacific at Spa on Friday, September the 29th. And if you want to tune in to the next round of the S1 GT3 Sprint Series at Mount Panorama, Bathurst will be an absolutely brilliant race to watch. That'll be on Wednesday, October the 11th at 9:10 EST, 6:10 Pacific. So if you want to watch some more S1 racing action, you know where to find us here on Apex Racing TV. You know what to do. If you've used YouTube for about 5 minutes, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, do all that things, and tune into some of the other racing action we have here on Apex Racing TV. We've got racing action all up and down the field, and the S1 Racing Series has definitely impressed us in the 2 rounds that's had so far this year. We thank Dr. Draber and Zine for supporting the series and making these broadcasts possible. We thank Simon Attrell, the series founder, and I thank Joshua Wilkie, along with you, Taylor, for joining us and helping us put together a fantastic, just showing off some fantastic racing tonight. That was absolutely awesome. I'll pass it off to you for some closing thoughts.
And I got to thank you as well, Ron, for being able to do this with us. It's always great to be able to cover some racing with you. And again, I'll give a second shout out to Wilkie, holding up everything behind the scenes, all the graphics, all the action, and all the camera work. And right before we go, I'll give you a little note from Kieran from the YouTube chat. He ran out of fuel at the line, and that's what made that last second overtake happen.
Oh, yeah, just it's fuel plays a little bit of a role. We saw the drivers had to come into the pits. I believe Piran was actually one of the earlier drivers to pit as well, so that could be the reason why he sputtered towards the end, and it cost him a little bit of time. But that'll do it here for the second round of the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series here on Apex Racing TV. Season 2, Round 2 here at Road America. It did not disappoint. It was action-packed from start to finish, and we hope to see you for the next round of this series. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Taylor Stolworthy joining me in the commentary booth, and Joshua Wilkie doing a fantastic job working all the cameras and the graphics in the virtual production hauler. I say thank you so very much for watching, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time at Sebring. Have a great rest of your night.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.